Mother and daughter aliens pregnant by the same human, what could go wrong? The starship Aurora's gaze hung in the silence of deep space, its hull reflecting the soft glow of a nearby nebula. Inside, the crew, comprised of humans, aliens, and an AI with an unusually sarcastic personality, was blissfully unaware of the chaos brewing in the ship's medical bay. Dr. Elijah Carter, a biologist and the ship's medical officer, stood frozen as two distinctly alien women stared him down. On the left was Valera, a regal member of the Saphirite species, her skin shimmering in iridescent hues of blue and silver. On the right stood Kalira, her daughter, whose youthful features glimmered with the same ethereal beauty, though tinged with green, a unique trait of younger Saphirites. Both women were visibly pregnant, their swollen abdomens glowing faintly, as was customary for their species. Elijah, Valera began, her voice calm yet laced with accusation. Care to explain why both my daughter and I are carrying your offspring? Elijah blinked. I feel like I'm going to need more context here. ##### 6 months earlier. The Saphirites were one of the most advanced species in the known galaxy, renowned for their culture, intellect, and their curious method of reproduction. Unlike humans, they required the genetic material of a compatible donor to conceive. Their advanced physiology could merge DNA from almost any species, provided it was stable. Elijah had been recruited as part of a diplomatic exchange program between Earth and the Saphirites. A talented biologist, he was thrilled at the opportunity to work alongside Valera, a renowned Saphirite scientist. Over time, their professional relationship had evolved into something more personal. Their late-night discussions about genetics and cultural differences led to a connection neither had anticipated. Then there was Kalira, Valera's daughter, who had joined the crew shortly after her mother. Young and adventurous, Kalira had taken an immediate interest in human culture, and Elijah, her fascination with his primitive but charming species had quickly turned into something deeper. What Elijah hadn't realized was that Saphirites had a unique way of solidifying bonds, a ceremony that, to humans, might resemble a casual dinner but was, in fact, a mutual agreement to combine genetic material. Elijah, blissfully unaware of the nuances, had participated in these dinners with both Valera and Kalira, unknowingly consenting to fatherhood, twice. ##### Back to the present. Elijah ran a hand through his hair, trying to find the words to de-escalate the situation. Look, I didn't mean for this to happen. I thought we were just, sharing meals. Sharing meals? Kalira's eyes narrowed. You call a binding genetic union sharing meals? Vilasite, pinching the bridge of her nose. You humans are truly clueless, but the damage is done. Now we must figure out how to proceed. The ship's AI, Nova, chimed in through the overhead speakers. If I may interject, this is the most fascinating soap opera I've ever had the pleasure of witnessing. Perhaps I should log this for future educational purposes? Not helping, Nova, Elijah snapped. Valera straightened, her shimmering form glowing brighter with resolve. This isn't just about us. Saphirite offspring are rare, and carrying hybrids with a human donor is unprecedented. The genetic implications are extraordinary. Kalira crossed her arms. Extraordinary or not, I'm not sharing my child's father with her. ****, Valera shot back, her regal composure cracking. Watch your tone, young one, I'm still your mother. Before things could escalate further, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Alert, Nova announced. Unidentified vessel approaching at high speed, hostile intent detected. Elijah groaned. Of course, because things couldn't possibly get any worse. #### A galactic chase. As the ship prepared for evasive maneuvers, Elijah found himself thrust into the chaos of balancing interstellar diplomacy, parenting debates, and the very real threat of annihilation by a rogue faction of pirates. To make matters worse, Valera and Kalira couldn't agree on anything, from the ship's defensive strategy to the names of their unborn children. Elijah, Valera said in the middle of the chaos, if we survive this, we need to discuss co-parenting arrangements. Kalira scowled. If we survive this, he's coming with me. My child deserves a father who isn't constantly running away from danger. Ladies, Elijah shouted, dodging a stray energy blast that rocked the ship, can we focus on not dying first? #### The aftermath. Hours later, the Aurora's gaze drifted in relative peace. The pirates had been defeated, thanks to a combined effort from the crew, and a surprising moment of teamwork between Valera and Kalira. Exhausted but alive, Elijah sat in the mess hall, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee. Valera and Kalira joined him, their expressions softened by the ordeal. Perhaps, Valera began, we've been too harsh. This is a unique situation. We'll need to find a way to work together. Kalira nodded reluctantly, for the sake of the children. Elijah looked between them, feeling a mix of relief and dread. I guess we're a family now? Nova's voice chimed in, dripping with sarcasm. A dysfunctional family hurtling through space with 2 pregnant aliens and a clueless human, truly heartwarming. Elijah sighed. What could possibly go wrong? #####. 1 month later, the Aurora's gaze was, against all odds, still in one piece, and so was Elijah, though his sanity was hanging by a thread. Life aboard the ship had turned into a delicate balancing act, between Valera's insistence on treating their situation with dignity and Safarite decorum and Kalira's impulsive antics. Elijah often found himself torn between diplomacy and disaster. The situation became even more complicated when the pregnancies began to progress faster than expected. Safarite hybrids, it turned out, developed at an accelerated rate, leaving little time for preparation. The medical bay was now more of a nursery in progress, complete with glowing incubators, piles of alien nutritional supplements, and an unholy mix of Valera and Kalira's preferences for decor. Elijah, Valera said one day, inspecting the nursery critically, the colors clash. You cannot pair Safarite cerulean with whatever that hideous beige is. Kalira rolled her eyes. Oh, please, it's neutral and calming. Humans use it all the time. It's drab, Valera replied, her voice sharp. I will not have my child brought into a room that looks like an abandoned cargo hold. Elijah massaged his temples. It's a nursery, not an art gallery. Can we please focus on the essentials, like figuring out how to raise these kids on a spaceship? Valera's expression softened, though she remained imperious. You're right, apologies, Elijah. It's just, this is all so unprecedented. I want everything to be perfect. Kalira smirked. Well, my baby's room is going to have personality, yours can have dignity. Elijah sighed. I'm going to need more coffee. #####. A growing problem. As the pregnancies entered their final stages, something strange began to happen. The hybrid babies, it seemed, were already exhibiting unique abilities. The ship's systems began experiencing random power surges, and objects in the medical bay would occasionally float or glow. Nova, the ship's AI, was quick to point out the phenomenon. Elijah, Nova said during a meeting in the medical bay, I've analyzed the anomalies. They appear to be linked to the unborn hybrids. Their physiology is producing some kind of electromagnetic field. Valera looked alarmed. That shouldn't be possible. Safarite offspring exhibit no such traits. Kalira, on the other hand, looked excited. You mean my baby's already doing cool stuff? That's amazing. It's not amazing if it destabilizes the ship's systems, Nova interjected. If the fields continue to grow, we could experience catastrophic failures. Elijah's heart sank. You're telling me that the babies could destroy the ship before they're even born? Essentially, yes, Nova replied dryly, but no pressure. #####. Emergency measures. Determined to prevent a disaster, the crew scrambled to find a solution. Valera dove into research, poring over ancient Safarite texts for any clue about hybrid pregnancies. Kalira experimented with meditation, hoping to calm the babies down. Elijah, meanwhile, worked with Nova to develop shielding for the medical bay to contain the electromagnetic fields. As tensions mounted, so did the arguments. You're not taking this seriously, Valera snapped at Kalira during yet another heated debate. I am, Kalira shot back. I just don't think we need to turn this into some big, dramatic crisis. It is a crisis, Valera exclaimed. If these fields aren't contained, we could all die. Ladies, Elijah interrupted, his voice louder than usual. Can we please focus? I need both of you to work with me, not against each other. Valera and Kalira exchanged glances, their expressions softening. For once, they both looked apologetic. You're right, Valera said quietly. This isn't the time for petty arguments. Kalira nodded. Let's figure this out, together. #####. A miraculous arrival. In the end, the hybrid's electromagnetic field stabilized just in time. Whether it was the shielding, Valera's research, or Kalira's meditation techniques, no one could say for sure, but as the delivery day arrived, the ship was calm, at least on the outside. Inside the medical bay, Elijah stood between Valera and Kalira, his nerves frayed. Safarite births were a spectacle in their own right, with radiant energy and bioluminescent displays lighting up the room. Valera was calm and composed, even as her glowing abdomen pulsed with light. Kalira, on the other hand, was anything but calm. Why does this hurt so much? Kalira groaned, clutching the edge of the bed. Because it's childbirth, Elijah said, trying to sound reassuring. It's supposed to hurt. Valera raised an eyebrow. Safarite births are not typically painful. Perhaps this is a human influence? Kalira glared at Elijah. Great. Thanks for passing on that lovely trait. Despite the chaos, the births went smoothly. Valera and Kalira each delivered a healthy hybrid baby, their tiny forms glowing softly with a blend of human and sapphirite features. Elijah couldn't help but feel a surge of pride and terror at the sight. "They're beautiful," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Valera smiled softly. "Indeed, they are." Kalira, cradling her newborn, grinned. "Mine's definitely cuter." Valera shot her a look. "This isn't a competition." Kalira smirked. "Oh, it absolutely is." Elijah groaned. "Here we go. ####, what could go wrong next? With the babies now part of the Aurora's gaze, life aboard the ship was more chaotic than ever. The hybrid's abilities continued to grow, causing new challenges, and occasional disasters, for the crew. Valera and Kalira bickered constantly, though their love for their children was undeniable. And Elijah? He was officially the most overworked, overstressed dad in the galaxy. But as he stood in the nursery one night, watching the baby sleep, he couldn't help but smile. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was his, and for the first time in a long while, he felt at home. What could possibly go wrong next? Elijah muttered to himself. From the overhead speakers, Nova's voice replied, "Oh, I'm sure we'll find out soon enough." ####, 6 months later, life aboard the Aurora's gaze had somehow found a semblance of order, if chaos, unpredictability, and absurdity could be considered order. Elijah, now a full-fledged father, had become an expert in navigating the bizarre dynamics of parenting hybrid sapphirite human babies. Valera and Kalira were, miraculously, learning to cooperate, most of the time, and the ship had adapted to its new, strange inhabitants. That is, until the latest incident with the ship's power core. Elijah had just finished his shift in the medbay when the entire ship suddenly lurched. His coffee spilled, splashing across his uniform as alarms blared. "Not again," Elijah muttered, wiping coffee off his shirt as he rushed to the control room. He could already hear Valera and Kalira arguing through the hallway, their voices sharp and heated. By the time he reached the command deck, Valera was already at the controls, her hands moving rapidly over the holographic panels. Kalira stood beside her, clearly agitated. "We told you not to mess with the core, Kalira," Valera snapped. "You can't just alter energy levels for fun." "I was trying to help," Kalira shot back, her eyes glowing slightly with irritation. "The baby's electromagnetic fields are getting stronger. I thought I could stabilize it." The ship lurched again, this time sending the crew stumbling. "Stabilize it? You're destabilizing it," Valera said, grabbing the edge of the console to steady herself. Elijah stepped in between them. "All right, enough." His voice carried more authority than he intended. "What's going on now?" Kalira crossed her arms. "I was trying to help the babies. Their abilities are growing, faster than we expected. The electromagnetic fields are starting to affect the entire ship's power systems. I thought if I increased the core output, we could." Increase the core output? Elijah echoed, his heart racing. "That's a terrible idea. The core is already overloading. Kalira, if you mess with it any further, we're going to end up in a star before you can say maternity leave." Kalira frowned, but it was Valera who spoke this time. "The ship's systems can't handle it. The baby's energy is amplifying, and whatever you did just now has made it worse. We need to find a way to stabilize them before this ship turns into a floating disaster zone." A sudden realization hit Elijah. "Wait, is this happening because of them? The babies?" Valera nodded. "Yes, the hybrid energy signatures are unstable." Her eyes glinted with worry. "The longer this continues, the more dangerous it will become. The electromagnetic interference is already starting to distort the ship's navigation systems." ####, a plan of action. Elijah paced the control room, trying to come up with a solution. "We need to get ahead of this before it spirals completely out of control," he muttered. Nova's voice piped in, seemingly delighted by the whole situation. "I've been tracking the baby's energy surges. Fascinating, truly. However, if you want my opinion, the only way to contain this is to find the core of the electromagnetic disturbance, the babies and isolate them before the entire ship becomes one big magnetic anomaly." Elijah blinked. "Wait, isolate them? You're telling me we need to lock down 2 babies?" He looked at Valera and Kalira. "How are we supposed to do that without? I don't know, scaring them half to death?" Valera's tone was grave. "It's not about scaring them, Elijah. It's about preserving the ship and our lives. The longer we wait, the more dangerous the situation becomes." Kalira frowned, her eyes flickering with that familiar spark of defiance. "You can't just lock them away. They're babies. I know they're powerful, but they don't understand what's happening. You're right, Elijah said, running his hands through his hair. We need to find a way to stabilize their powers, safely. Nova chimed in again. Well, I do have one suggestion, but you won't like it. There's a neural dampener array in the lower decks. It's usually used for high-level Sapphirite telepathic communication. If you can isolate the baby's frequencies, you can use the array to temporarily suppress their energy fields. Elijah exchanged a glance with Valera and Kalira. Temporarily suppress? Kalira asked, her voice tight. That sounds risky. It's our best shot, Elijah replied, and better than letting the whole ship collapse in on itself. #### The search for the neural dampener. The journey to the neural dampener array wasn't an easy one. The ship's corridors had been warped by the growing electromagnetic interference. Lights flickered, and the air felt charged, like static before a lightning storm. The crew moved cautiously, following the fluctuating path of the power surges as they approached the lower decks. Elijah, Valera said, her voice unusually quiet, I know you're trying your best to protect everyone, but you have to understand, this situation is bigger than us. The babies, this is a level of power we haven't seen before. If we can't contain it, the damage could be catastrophic. I know, Elijah replied, his tone grim, but I'm not about to give up on them, or you too. Kalira glanced at him, her expression softening for the first time in a while. You're not as bad as I thought. Elijah chuckled, though it was strained. Thanks, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me in days. The door to the neural dampener array opened with a hiss, revealing a vast chamber filled with glowing machinery. In the center was a large console, its lights blinking in an eerie rhythm. Elijah moved quickly to it, his hands flying over the controls as Valera and Kalira stayed close, watching. All right, Elijah muttered, let's hope this works. He activated the neural dampener, and a soft hum filled the air. For a moment, nothing seemed to change. Then, the ship gave a sudden lurch, and a flash of light erupted from the medical bay. The baby's energy signature was on the move. They're trying to break free, Kalira said, her eyes widening in alarm. Elijah gritted his teeth. I know, but we've got to hold them just a little longer. #### The ultimate test. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. Elijah, Valera, and Kalira raced back to the medical bay, where the baby's energies were reaching their peak.